Whether it is glib answers, ghosting, or hiding in a fridge, it amounts to deception and to avoiding an honest answer. And we should be able to expect our ministers and our governments to be a little bit more direct. I'm fully aware that avoidance of issues is part of the political machinery, but it's become a mainstay to such an extent that it has broken trust. So therefore we have to try and reform this. And what we need to demand, I think, is not so much honesty but consistency. That's a starting point. So when we consider Liz Truss, and we look at the leaked audio tape the other day where she was saying that people in the UK are lazy and that they need to put in more graft, there was something there which was very interesting and very telling, and perhaps it wasn't immediately noticeable. She actually says at the end of that little audio recording that Europe and migration are distractions from the real issue. The real issue is that we need to put in more graft. Now, of course, it is shocking that she's saying that the British worker is lazy. But it's perhaps more shocking that she's saying that Europe and migration are lies, are not real, that this is a distraction from the reality. From that point of view, I am almost inclined to agree with her. I don't think that the problem is graft. I think the problem is leadership. So if we don't see proper leadership and leadership that accepts responsibility for things that go wrong and takes credit when things go right, then we have an unfocused workforce. So it's not a problem of saying that people don't put in enough effort. They do put in enough effort. They are treated appallingly. And so it's not the workforce which is the problem, it's management which is the problem. And that management goes all the way up to the Houses of Parliament. And Liz Truss sort of changes on a dime, to use an American expression, when she's answering a question. She also changes the nature of her voice, the pitch of her voice. It's changed remarkably in only 3 years. So the audio recording was in 2019. And then if you listen to her answering questions at some of the hustings, in one instance, she's saying, absolutely, we need to cut European red tape. Well, why? Why, if Europe and migration are a distraction from hard graft? She's on tape saying one thing. She's on stage saying something entirely different. So what is true? The problem with Liz Truss is not that she is telling lies. She may well be, but she's not being consistent. And therefore, how can somebody who's not consistent command trust? When we look at politicians, particularly senior politicians, we look at the way in which they manage their party, the way in which they manage their home, and then, frankly, we look at the way in which they manage the country, and the one seems to be linked to another. So Boris Johnson famously had a chaotic private life, and that chaos got the better of him in public life. Mrs. May kept quite a tidy sort of personal life, but her management of the party was appalling, and her management of the country was equally appalling. She believed, foolishly, that everything can be solved with a quick signature on a piece of paper, that bureaucracy is the answer to all our problems. Bureaucracy is not. Bureaucracy is simply another form of tyranny. Bureaucracy is there to serve, not to be served. And if we get it wrong, we're in a mess. Bureaucracy is something, well, modern bureaucracy is something which really was invented by the East India Company, this idea of everything in triplicate. And it's very good as far as it goes. It keeps a very good record of what's been going on. But if that dominates our lives, then we cannot move because of the paperwork. And that is what Mrs. May has done to the Home Office, and that is why the Home Office can't process anything, because there's too much to process. So instead of solving problems, she created problems, which forms a nice distraction. She says she's doing something. Yes, indeed, she is doing something. She's actually doubling the workload. So in order to move that workload, we need more civil servants. Exactly the opposite of what the present government is calling for. So we need consistency. We need realism. And if we don't have these, then our governments, whether they are Conservative, Labour or Liberal, will fail.